In related news, as national elections in November draw nearer, studies are showing that the economy and cost of living are overwhelmingly the single most important issues for voters. Senior contributing editor with JPOST, Herb Keinon, joining with more. Now, Herb, in a recent article, you wrote that former IDF chief Gadi Eisenkot's entry into politics is overblown, and that the newly named National Unity Party, which he joined, still has no plan for the economy. Why is Eisenkot's political debut overblown? And which parties do have an explicit economic plan?
Look, I found it was kind of fascinating that just a couple of days after the Israel Democracy Institute came out with a poll showing that 44% of the Israelis place economic issues as the main factor determining who they're going to vote for, right? And only 11% saying that foreign policy, security issues, which for a long time was the bread and butter of the campaigns, that would be their determining factor. Just days after that poll came out, what did Gantz do? He put his number 3 on his list as the big draw, somebody who's a security maven, who's an ex-general who knows foreign policy and national security, but not necessarily anything on about economics. So we, the public, doesn't know where he stands on economics. So I think that just kind of shows a certain tone deafness there about where the traditional trajectory of campaigns has always gone, and where this one might be going because of the high cost of living.
All right. So again, which parties maybe have a relevant plan?
Look, right now, you're hearing different plans coming from Likud, and you're hearing certain comments coming from Yesh Atid, but a coherent plan. What we're going to do X, Y, and Z, we haven't seen yet. But remember, we're still two and a half months outside of the elections or before the elections. But I think what's going to be important is whether or not the politicians realize that right now in the public, this is a burning issue. Right. And I think to a certain extent, you're starting to see that. I know the Likud came out with a campaign clip yesterday in which, the high cost of living, that was the main thing that they were drumming on. So I think, there's a realization of that. What happens, though, in this country is that could turn on a dime, right? Sure. Because if there's a security issue, if there's some, God forbid, if there's another war in Gaza, then it all goes back to what elections have generally been determined on security. Here, and that's security.
All right, well, sticking with some of the other main voter issues here. Earlier, when I was speaking of the housing crisis, economic commentator Adrian Filuti said that it's the supply of housing that is the biggest problem here. Do you agree? And again, is there a party that maybe addressed that within their general outline?
Look, I'm not an expert on the housing market. I can't explain to you why the prices are so high. I mean, what I understand is that it has to do with the price of the land. The government's not willing to release the land at a reasonable price, and that drives the prices up. For the last 10 years, various political parties have been trying to look for the magic bullet in order to bring the housing prices down, right. And they haven't done so. I think, because to a certain degree, this issue bursts into the headlines and then it kind of dies. If it stays in the headlines, then maybe you'll see some coherent policies and some tough decisions being made once there's a government.
All right. Now, aside from economic news, there have been several political shakeups ahead of the elections, new parties, new alliances, and also new divisions of some of the parties. What do you make of the new lineup as it is today? And what will the political ideological balance be in November, according to your predictions? Do you think that we'll have a similar, 50-50 tie almost in the next Knesset, or is a right-wing or left-wing bloc going to pick up more seats?
Look, I think it's fascinating because you've got the same population of the country essentially voting for the fifth time for the same candidates on the same issues. So to think that this time it'll end up significantly different, I think, is a pipe dream. In the best scenario, you could have one block or the other block maybe getting 61 seats. But we saw from the last government that that's not necessarily a dream scenario either. So you've got all these different configurations, but what you haven't seen yet is any one party being able to move somebody from one block to the next block. And that's the game, right? The game is now not rearranging the seats on the anti-Bibi block or the pro-Bibi block, but is to get somebody from the pro-Bibi block to move over to the anti-Bibi block or vice versa.
Do you see anybody actually pulling voters away from someone else's voter base? Do you see that?
Not significantly. Not significantly. Maybe one seat or two seats here, but not enough to make a big difference. So you ask the question. So then what's going to be, right? Then how can we have a government? You can only have a government then if you have parties which stop boycotting each other and realize you can't have a government with 61. And in order not to have a government with 61, they're going to have to start to sit one with the other. These boycotts, I can't sit with him and they can't sit with me. That doesn't work. And if they go down that track again, we're going to go back to a 6th election in no time.
Herb, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.